right, everybody, welcome back to the Friday Night Prepper Pre-Party Show. This is a different format. We're trying something new tonight. I have with me Maccabeus Everyday Survival. How you doing today, brother?
Good. How are you, brother?
Doing good, doing good. And we are going to be debating universal basic income. And if you don't know what that is, don't worry. We're gonna explain that. Before we get into that, let's do our usual channel rules and give people a chance to get past any ads and things like that. Sparrow Bushcraft, good to see you, brother. Sparrow's one of my friends over on Instagram. Good guy. And I saw a bunch of people in chat earlier. Let me just say hi to people real quick. Kentucky, I hope you made it. I saw your message that you were trying to set your alarm. I hope you made it. Angie, I saw your message. Thank you so much. Gen X Gemini, this might be your first time to the channel, so thank you for joining us. I think Max said he knows who you are. Cold War Prepper Lee, thank you so much. Always appreciate seeing you. Ed Benoit, thank you. And did I miss anybody else? Sparrow. Okay, got you all. So if you're brand new to the channel, just a couple of quick rules that we have here. No racism, no sexism. Be kind to the moderators and the guests, please. If you wanna throw any shade, throw it at me, not at them. And I was gonna do a poll at the top. I think I'm gonna pass on that. So I think what I was gonna ask y'all was, before we even start this, is to just think about if you know what universal basic income is, if you're for it or against it, before we even debate. Just kind of get that in your mind, and then I'm gonna ask people at the end if anything that we said changed you one way or the other. Okay. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna be going back and forth, kind of giving different points about. I'm going to take the part of being in favor of universal basic income, and Mac's going to be the part of against it. I will say, for a little disclosure from me, in truth, I'm on the fence about it, but I'm going to speak as if I was 100% in favor of it. I think there's some points that are worth considering, and I'll try to explain why I feel that way. And I think that's it. Did you have any announcements, Mac? Please make sure you check out his channel, by the way, which we have scrolling down the bottom, and I believe I put that in description as well. Mac, did you have any announcements today?
No, sir. I'm good to go.
Good to go. All right. Everyday life of an OCD chick. Thanks for joining us. Idaho Garden Girl, thank you for joining us. Yeah, if you enjoy this at all, please consider giving a thumbs up, and if you're new to the channel, please consider subscribing. All right. Well, I guess we'll go ahead and get right into it then. All right. So first of all, if you're not familiar with what universal basic income is, it would be basically you would get a paycheck, presumably from the government. And it is, for it to be considered UBI, it has to be unconditional, right? So it's regardless of your wealth, right? So you could be a multi-billionaire like Elon Musk, or you could be somebody who's homeless, and you would basically get the same amount. Okay. If it's a program that's doing it different than that, it is not UBI. And there are several examples of this that have been tested in small doses, right? So the Alaska Permanent Fund is the closest thing that we have to that, which is, if you're not familiar with the Alaska Permanent Fund, residents of Alaska, citizens, are eligible to receive a check. I believe it's once per year, based on the oil profits from Alaska. And then the next closest thing would be the Eastern Band of Cherokee Indian Casino Dividend, which people who are Cherokee Indian of that area, I believe, I don't know if it's all Cherokee Indian across the United States. I think you have to be in that region, are eligible to get some of the casino profits. And that, from what I understand, is usually, somewhere between $3,000 and $6,000 a year. The Alaska Permanent Fund ends up being, on average, like around $1,500 per year. So they're not huge amounts of money. Conceivably, if we were talking about like a large scale implementation of this, you'd be talking about much bigger numbers than those two very small examples. Okay. Anything you want to add to that, Mac, before I go on to my first point?
No, it's basically free welfare for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
Socialism.
Yeah. There's no denying it. It is definitely a socialist idea.
It goes along with the Cloward Piven strategy.
Mm-hmm.
Are you
all right? You want to go first? Tell us a little bit about that for those who aren't familiar with that.
Cloward and Piven were a man and woman back in, like, I think the 60s, and they come up with a strategy to destroy America, and it was to basically introduce everybody into the welfare system and get as many people into the welfare state as they could to collapse the system.
Okay. What would be how would that put people at a risk of collapsing the republic?
How would that put a risk to it?
Mm-hmm.
Inflation. Yeah, I mean, you get everybody on there. The money's got to come from taxes, so they raise taxes, so you're still getting this free income, but you're paying more taxes, and it's just a vicious circle, and it's communism. It doesn't work.
Okay. All right. So I guess I'll go to the cost speak of that part of that then. So there's no doubt that this would be expensive. Absolutely no doubt. It probably would involve raising taxes, and it's hard to see that this would be done without having to raise taxes on disproportionately to higher incomes. So then it lends the question of course, of if I'm giving you $1,000 but I'm taxing you $3,000, then it's a redistribution of wealth, right? I would say that there is some ways that we could potentially do this that would cut down on some of those costs, and some of the models that I've read about that would potentially do this, and Andrew Yang is where I pulled a lot of my information from. If people don't remember that name, he was a candidate for president about 4 years ago, and this was one of the things on his platform was the universal basic income, which he called the freedom dividend. The idea with Andrew Yang's plan would be people who so not everybody's going to like this, but I'm going to throw it out there. People who are getting welfare or Social Security or Social Security disability, that would go away and be replaced with this. Now, if all American citizens got $1,000 a month as universal basic income, and you were potentially making more than that through Social Security or Social Security disability, you would be taking a pay cut for sure. So why would this potentially be a pro? Well, it would potentially be a pro in that it redistributes at a more equitable, right? So as somebody who's grew up middle class, I always kind of fell in the middle, right? Like my family fell in the middle of, we never qualified for any financial assistance. We were always over that cutoff line, nor were we ever in a high enough bracket where we got the tax benefits that the rich get from. So I grew up with one of the things that was said in my household is the middle class gets screwed. I still believe that the middle class gets screwed. This would be a more equitable chance to get some assistance for all families. And by cutting out the Social Security disability, general welfare, some of the costs could be covered with that. Obviously, that is not going to cover all of it. I'm not dumb. I know that. There may be opportunities to come up with other ways that it doesn't necessarily have to hit the American taxpayer as heavily. Such as one thought that I had would be, how much money do we spend supporting proxy wars all over the world, right? How much money have we given to Ukraine just in the last couple of years? So if we were to cut down that budget, the amount of money that's spent on military operations all around the world, that would also help to offset this. And final thought on being able to pay for it would be, we're one of the only countries that doesn't do tariffs, and we could potentially put tariffs on products that are being shipped out of the United States to other countries, and have other countries help to contribute towards this universal basic income or freedom dividend or whatever we wanted to call it, to help reimburse Americans for Americans' hard work.
So it's basically on top of your wages that you're already getting. It's not a check to just sit at home.
So that's a great question. So the idea with the universal basic income, as opposed to Social Security disability, as somebody who's worked in mental health for years, Social Security disability can be a disincentive to work, right? Because there's stipulations where you can only make so much money on Social Security disability, and then you risk losing your health insurance, or you
Yeah.
risk losing your check, or having your check cut if you make too much. A universal basic income would not do that. You would get your $1,000 per month or whatever it was, and whatever you decided to make on top of that. So in a way, it could actually incentivize work.
Well, I guess if they cut out all that other spending, it might work, but I don't really see them cutting out all that other spending to other countries and all these pork projects and ridiculous ideas. And
It would be hard to get people to give that money up, wouldn't it?
well, our systems went on this way for so long, I just don't see them cutting it all off.
Yeah, that's a good point. Let me go into one of my points here. The universal basic income, in the areas where it's been tried, it does seem to reduce poverty. This is according to studies that have been done by the Economic Security Project. People can look that up, and I'm sure that they have their own biases to this. I'm not saying that they don't. Brazil in 2020 began a program where they were giving 1,600 reais per month, and they noticed that the poverty level, once they started doing that, fell to the lowest rate in 40 years. Namibia did something called the Basic Income Grant, which cut poverty rates in half. India did a trial UBI where that showed that it improved participant health, access to medications, more nutrition improved, and access to clean water improved. Kenya did one where they did a reduction, and when Kenya did their trial, they showed a reduction in need for mental health services. Absolutely, we know that poverty is tied to stress. It exacerbates stress, and stress eventually leads to other health issues, from heart issues to brain issues to digestion issues. So I would say when we start weighing in some of those things, although UBI would no doubt cost a significant amount of money, that those things could or should be weighed against the potential costs that it would be to taxpayers. What do you think about that, Mac?
Well, Elon Musk, I watched some stuff on him about it, and he said that what's going to bring it on is everything going to automation with the jobs. And so most of the stuff I looked at, basically the jobs would go away, and it would just be an income that everybody lived on.
And not a high one. Like we're not a high one. Like we're not talking about if it's $1,000 per month or whatever they decide it is. It's not going to be the kind of money that's going to let anybody go to take a vacation or anything like that.
Right. It feels to me like one of them things to get everybody into 15-minute cities and living in your little pod and that sort of thing. Mm-hmm. Everything I looked at about it, I mean, I may have looked at the wrong sources too.
Well, one of the concerns that I had, Mac, as I was trying to research this stuff, was that a few places that did it, and this I will say I would be opposed to this for sure. They tied it in with, so if you wanted the money, you had to participate in healthcare, and your kids had to go to the public schools.
Yeah.
I would have a problem with that. Like if they were going to do this, it can't be contingent on, basically you play by our rules,
Yeah. Yes. And I guess there's several pros to it, but the cons far outweigh it to me. I think a person's ending up giving up more liberty to get a free income. That's what it boils down to. I've got 5 children. Huh?
I think that's a fear. Yeah. That what if they said, for example, think about what we had a couple of years ago where they were trying to make everybody take medicine in their arm, right?
Yeah.
Whether or not your belief systems allowed for that, or I personally had a friend who had severe allergies to any vaccine that she ever took. She had bad reactions to it. She even had 3 different doctors recommend that she not take it, and her employer was going to fire her. And so that kind of stuff is concerning to me if we're going to say, okay, well, we're going to give you this benefit, but
Yeah.
you have to do everything we say. I wouldn't want that to happen.
Yeah. Yeah, I've got 5 solid things I could be on disability for right now, or SSI, and I don't want to be a part of that system because that's exactly why. Because they can start requiring you to do this and this and this and this, just to get that. And once you get assimilated to their income coming in, it doesn't feel good to an independent spirit to me.
No. And I support that. I agree with you. I know that every once in a while people will try to propose things like if you're on disability or if you're receiving welfare that you should be mandated to take drug tests. Well, I mean, my thoughts on this is, I'm not advocating for anybody to go smoke marijuana or anything like that. I don't live in a state where it's even legal, but I do know that it's helped a lot of people with their sleep and cancer pain and things like that. And it seems kind of draconian to say the only way you can receive assistance from us is if you do these things and you have to come pee in a cup every year or once a month or whatever they decided,
And take their pharmacy medicines instead of something natural.
Yep. Yeah. Yes. And not to get too far on the off of a tangent on this, but I have a friend on Instagram who teaches natural medicine, and they are cracking down hard on that. She's having a really hard time on social media. They're just like putting those warning things all over her stuff. It's been bad. Let's take a little break here and let's check our comments here, see if anybody has any thoughts so far. Scroll back up a little bit. So a prepper and a survivalist walk into a bar. How does that joke end, Ed? I would like to know. Find get animals away. Yeah, okay, doing all right. Kentucky made it. All right, welcome, Kentucky. I'm doing good. Okay. Looks like most people are kind of against it so far. James says it likely wouldn't work in the USA for whatever reason. Yeah, that's kind of what you were saying before, right, Mac? Because of our entrenched systems. Yeah. Burpee Yoga Uncle, thank you so much for joining. Appreciate you. Aloha. So I didn't read, James. I didn't read too much about Netherlands and Saudi Arabia. I think it was Kenya that I read has the longest running one, and it seems to be so far for them. Of course, their country is very, very different than ours. Seems to be working well for them. Now you have to remember everything's remote, like rural villages and things like that, except for a few little cities. Gail Southern Living, good to see you. Lazarus Long, thank you. Appreciate you. Dystopia under the guise of utopia. Yeah, maybe. My dad and my mom used to say there's no such thing as anything is free.
Yeah.
What do you think about that?
I agree 100%. I just had that conversation with another YouTuber here about a month ago, and these ads that they run all the time saying the government's giving away $5,000 and blah, 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 blah. And he had checked into one or something and it sounded legit and he was going to try it. And I said, I don't want any of their free money. And he said that the free money, I've paid that money in. And I said, no, I understand that moral argument that we've all paid it in. But anytime there's free money, there's something else attached to it. And they're going to want something out of you. It may not be today and it may not be tomorrow, but next year, it's like taking a poke or something, like you mentioned earlier. Yeah. It could be anything. Your driver's license, The more you get underneath their thumb, the worse off you are.
So, and here's the other thing that I would say would be a concern for me would be if they did something like this, and then, let's say 20 years down the road, the money's not there. We're having some kind of problems as a country that's worse than we could have imagined. And or people just they don't like it anymore or something like that. It's very hard to undo something like this. Like Social security, right? We started that in what, the 40s, or it's after
30.
World War II, right? Was it the 30s?
It might have been the 40s or 50s.
Okay. Um, and now they, they of course we're worried about, like, how are we going to fund this in the future? How do you take, my question would be, how do you take something like that away, right? Like, so you're talking about millions of people rely on that for just basic needs, food, rent, electricity. You take that away, and now we're talking about hundreds of millions of people potentially homeless. Now we got an even bigger problem. So you start a program like UBI, and after, if you don't, like, pilot it for a year or two and say, okay, that's it, we're stopping. Once it goes past a certain point, it's almost impossible to take it away without causing massive damage. James says it doesn't matter what they call the turd under fractional reserve banking. Hey, Tuck by V, thank you so much for joining us. Going about it completely wrong. The world's going to change due to AI. So let's talk about that. Mac was saying that a few minutes ago. So I am concerned about this. I talk a lot about AI and automation and where this is going for us as a country. And I've read all kinds of different things. Of course, I don't think anybody knows for sure, but I've seen numbers as high as that within the next few years, we may have like 40% job displacement. That's 40% would be huge. 40%. I mean, that would be, you're talking about things like the numbers from the Great Depression, right? Where half the country is unemployed. That's a scary thought. And what do we do with that? Like, what do we do if 40% of the country, and that's probably being conservative, it could be higher than that, but let's say 40%. What do we do if 40% of the country can't afford their rent or mortgage, can't afford groceries, can't afford electricity, can't afford their medicines, can't afford basic water, like, water. And how many people in the country would you say are like a survivalist like yourself, or prepper like myself, that can try to survive without all those things being readily accessible? Would you say it's less than 5% of the country?
Well, I don't think it's limited to what we see on the internet. I know a lot of people that are like-minded that aren't on the internet. They think it's a big risk to even be on there. Mm-hmm. And then, country people in general, there's a lot of people that just can, here where I live at, they always have, their mom and dad did. So I think the number could be higher. I think it'll hit the rural areas a lot easier than it will the city areas. City areas get hit hard.
Yeah. Wasn't that true during the Depression too? Like the farmlands basically they survived quite a bit better.
Yeah, except for what was in the Dust Bowl.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of them ended up going out to California to pick fruit and stuff like that, going to cities to try to find work.
Mm-hmm. It gets to be a very complicated question, right? So let's just think about for a second all the people out there who have a mortgage, and 40% of those people lose their job, and maybe some have savings, or they can dip into some retirement income that they may have put away, or something like that, but eventually that dries up too. So let's say that you have 40% of the country is not that are homeowners that are not paying their mortgage anymore. The banks, to some extent, like they'll repo a property to some extent, but they don't want that much property. That's not the bank is not interested in taking that much property, because then in a situation like we're describing, they can't even turn around and really sell it.
Yeah.
So what happens to the banks then if they're not getting paid?
The banks start failing and they have to be bailed out.
And then
that's
eventually
we ought to quit. We ought to just let them fail, in my opinion.
So let's say the top 5 banks failed, right? Mm-hmm. I don't even know, what would that be? Probably Wells Fargo, Citibank, maybe Bank of America.
Yeah.
I don't know if Chase is in the top 5 or whatever, but let's say the top 5 banks failed. What does that do for businesses that are relying on the automation, right? So let's say that I've got a Tesla factory, And at some point, I've basically automated almost all of it. Like everything's being put together by these robots or machines. But I also rely on the banks to basically move my money, right? To deposit and to pull out, so that a business can't operate with, well, a large scale business like that can't operate without a bank. A small business could, but a large scale business like that couldn't. So then you start having big businesses go under, right? So let's just say Kellogg's, Conagra, Dole, Chiquita, right? Big companies like that. So the problems you could see, right? The problem would eventually snowball to affect everybody. It doesn't just hit those 40% that are unemployed.
Right.
So
Yeah,
I don't.
It would hit the whole nation pretty hard, and that would mean we'd either totally collapse down to nothing, or they'd bring in something more dystopian than what we have now.
Yeah. What do you think that would be? Like a CBDC?
Yeah, digital currency. Yeah. Social credit score, all about everything you see going on in China.
Mm-hmm.
Drones running around the countryside telling uncle to get in the house.
Yeah.
Did you see that video?
I did not, but I think that doesn't surprise me. I think that future is right around the corner for us, unfortunately.
Yeah, when they were all locked up, there was drones running around the countryside, and the farmer was out in his field. He's out there not around anybody, and drone would pull up and tell him to go to his house.
That was in China?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Was that during like when they were having a surge in the pandemic or something like that?
2020. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So I actually listened to an interview with a guy that was from China. He was speaking under anonymity, and he was just a civilian. But when they were locking down, especially around Beijing and the big cities, they were hiring, like, we would call them deputies, right? I don't know what the word for it there is, but we would call them deputies. And so they were deputizing quite a bit of people to do exactly what you were talking about, basically to enforce that you have to stay in your house. And he said it was paid pretty well. And he said, you look at the situation where nobody was working, so you could do this and you could get pretty good money. And what they did was they would assign like a team of 5 or 6 of those to one person who actually had some police training, and that person would be like their squad leader or whatever they would call it, and they just basically went around patrolling the streets. And if you left your house, you potentially got a beat down, basically.
Yeah.
They might give you a warning to go back inside.
That's the way it was in the Philippines during all that.
Yeah. I hope we never see something like that here.
I think the only thing that's going to ever stop it all is basically a collapse of what's here now, because our government is so strong now, and I don't see, even if things collapse, they're just going to go in their bunkers and hide out for a few years and come out and straighten everything out the way they think it needs to be, or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying that a person can't be free. I'm just saying that it's gotten too strong. The whole system has.
Well, you think about the history of the United States, right? We went to war with England, and two of the biggest reasons were, and I grew up in Massachusetts, where a lot of that history happened, and two of the reasons were that high taxes, and the straw that really broke the camel's back was when they tried to take their guns. Right, that's what kicked it off. People forget that, but that led to the shot heard around the world. And the irony of that is, as somebody who grew up in Massachusetts has some of the highest taxes in the country and some of the most draconian firearms laws in the country. So what are we talking? 150 years, right? 150 years. We've completely lost sight of why we fought with England to become our own nation in the first place.
I wholeheartedly believe that the only way to stop this system from getting any worse is at the state level. because the states can make a lot of changes at the state level and block a lot of it, and that's what needs to happen.
Yeah.
And I'm going to continue to vote because that's what I'm supposed to do, but I'm not sure that it even matters anymore, just in light of the last.
It's frustrating. It's frustrating. I agree. I'm continuing to vote as well. Sometimes it feels like my vote doesn't matter, but I will continue to vote.
Yeah.
The way I look at it is that's also my right to complain. So I vote so that I can basically bitch about things.
Yeah.
And you know, I do my best to, just like you do, to try to raise people's awareness and try to get people thinking a little bit more. That's part of what we do here as well. So Ed had a really interesting comment here. I wanted to get to this. Let me get to you in 1 second, Ed. Sparrow says, I'm not political, so I have nothing to add, really. All I know is I bust my butt and can't be comfortable, and I've always held a job since I was 16. Amen, brother. And he says, I feel the USA needs to focus on home. Yeah, and I know, despite my comment before about aid to Ukraine and proxy wars and things like that, I'm not opposed to helping allies at all. I'm really not. But I agree with you that we should be doing more to focus on at home. It's very frustrating for me, somebody who works in the mental health system, that we can build a bomb that costs $10 million, and we're all proud of that, and we'll build thousands of those. But when a veteran comes back from war, they want to skimp on the services that are available to them. And then if they need prosthetics, they'll try to find ways to get the cheapest prosthetic. And if they need a surgery, they'll try to find ways to deny them that surgery, or medications, right? So we send our veterans off to fight these wars for democracy, for freedom, to help our allies, all of these things. Sometimes it's for oil, sometimes it's for other things. But we send them off and we ask them to pay this huge price. I think any veteran is worth way more than any bomb. And it's very frustrating that we seem to have that backwards too, right? Like the money that pours into the military industrial complex, the companies that make these weapons, compared to the money that pours into VA, it's really hurts my heart.
And that's why I said a while ago about, as one of the pros, if they cut out all that, the UBI would work. And the industrial military complex is very powerful. And I just can't see them letting all that kind of stuff go. And there'd be a civil war inside of the government type thing before it went away,
Yeah, that's a very valid point. I had an uncle who worked for one of those companies and did very, very well, and he helped design the Patriot missile. There's a lot of money in those companies. There's a lot of power in those companies. And, we're in a few weeks here, we're going to be having a conversation about UAPs and things like that with a panel. These companies have tech that some people say that even the government doesn't know about. Like, they have weapons and tech that even the government that's sending the money to build this stuff doesn't even know what the money is being used for. I'm talking about like David Grush and those guys there that have the whistleblowers that are saying that they've got crazy stuff that the government doesn't even know what they're doing with this money. Right. So we've got what's our most advanced jet right now? The Raptor, maybe the F-22 Raptor.
Yeah.
What if Lockheed has something that blows that out of the water?
Yeah. Right? I'm sure they've got stuff they've not even released.
Right. Or Boeing or Raytheon or Northrop Grumman, any of those companies. Like, what if they have stuff that blows anything that the military has out of the water and they're just holding it back? Like, so you talked about a possible civil war between the military industrial complex and the actual military. Man, that would be bloody. It would be bloody.
And with the AI technology, our government would be fighting robots inside of their own civil war.
Yeah. And there's something really cold about that, right? Like, war is bad enough. You think about loved ones that you may have lost, friends that you might have lost, right? And then imagine they're overseas and they're getting killed by a heartless machine that doesn't, it's not even a person. There's something that feels even more cold about that,
Yeah.
Ed's comment was UBI has only been given to poor people and very select, and most countries don't have social nets like the United States. Yeah, so I guess the question would be, is Social Security like our version of UBI, but you don't get to qualify for it until you reach retirement age or you get disabled? It's not truly UBI then, but I guess it's like our version of UBI.
We'll be lucky if there's anything in there by the time me and you retire, Sarge.
So the people keep saying, and if that happens, if the system collapses, we're got, it's not gonna be good. We probably are looking at a civil war, I would say, at that point. You are the Kentucky says you are the carbon they want to cut. Yeah. Sometimes I think that, and then I see other stuff like, was it Maryland that's incentivizing people? They're paying people to have babies. Did you see that, Mac? If somebody wants to, maybe one of the mods can look that up. They're paying people, I think, $1,000 to have a baby. So there's I have so many questions about that. First of all, in your first year of raising a baby, it's going to cost you more than $1,000.
Yeah.
Actually, your hospital bill alone is probably going to be more than $1,000. And then, I think when you hear about them worried about population decline, I think that nobody really cares if the population declines, except it means less taxpayers. That's what they care about.
Yeah.
You agree with that?
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. Waiting for the moment. Cold War Prepper, I'm not familiar with that. Mac, are you familiar with that stuff there, that material?
Let me get my glasses on here and read it.
Payne and Duvall?
Lee,
yeah. Lee, if you want to give us a little bit more information, I'll put it up on the board there. Palmetto says UBI would cause the same problems as BAH. In military cities, everyone knows how much you get. So yes. That happens. That's an issue here in Charleston, not just with BAH, but whenever, like let's say the police officers, firefighters, whatever, when everybody gets a raise, it's kind of public information. And then subsequently you see the landlords all just raising the rent. So it's like they never really get ahead. It's just somebody who's higher up on the food chain says, oh, you got more money, we'll take that money. Do you agree with that, Mac?
I'm sorry, I was thinking about his comment a little bit. I didn't hear everything you say. Plus your mic is still scratchy, so I'm having to really strain to catch everything you're saying.
Sorry. So just the concept that like whenever people are given raises, that subsequently the businesses around there are going to raise their costs for food, rent, whatever. Yeah. I see that here in Charleston.
Yeah.
They jack up the rent like crazy anytime there's, people get a little bit more money in their pocket.
Yeah, that's the problem with raising the minimum wage.
I agree.
I've made minimum wage before, and you just have to cut back on the things that you normally wouldn't have. Most people could survive on minimum wage if they would cut. I mean, an individual could. I'm not saying a family. You couldn't raise a family on minimum wage.
Yeah, it'd be hard. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, there's definitely. I mean, we all could cut stuff out, right? Like, I got my fancy headphones on. There's just one example. I mean, I don't know how much did this shirt cost. Did I need to buy this shirt, or could I have gotten a shirt from like Goodwill, right? Yeah. I think that's a problem that with the living wage. Out in California, the fast food workers demanded $20 an hour or something like that. If I get the information wrong, people can correct me in chat. And so what's happening, they're seeing some of these fast food restaurants, either they're raising their prices so that like a Big Mac is going to cost you like $9 now. And, eventually what happens is some of these businesses, if people aren't going to buy the $9 Big Mac, they just fold. They just go under, or they're going to go to automation to replace those workers.
Well, that's what it's coming to. I've seen a video here a while back of a McDonald's that was almost completely automated.
Mm-hmm. And what are they? Yeah, I think it's Miso Robotics, which ironically is in California. That company's in California, and they make that thing that basically flips the fries. It's a machine that flips the fries. Seeing if I missed any questions here from y'all. Yeah, Pentucky. So, I grew up. I feel very blessed that I grew up in the 70s and 80s. I was born basically at the end of the Vietnam War, so never, I don't have any memory of that. Just that dads and uncles and whatnot that were that would tell the stories, but I didn't grow up with any real memory of the U.S. being in that. And so it really wasn't until 2001 when the Trade Center got attacked that then that's quite a long period of peace, right? Like we had skirmishes around the world and whatnot, but for the most part, we weren't. It was a peaceful period of time from the 70s to the 90s through the 90s. And kids growing up after 2001, right? Like, so if you've got family, or maybe you're in that age group if you're watching this. I've certainly got nephews and nieces. They've only grown up with that. They've only grown up with the U.S. being involved in one war or the other. And now we're currently in proxy wars. There's not so much boots on the ground, but that's probably coming. Mac, were you a child of the 70s?
Huh?
Were you a child of the 70s? Is that when you grew up?
I was born in 1970.
Yeah. So you're just a couple of years older than me then. I mean, we had it pretty good growing up, even if you didn't, for in terms of like where the country was in terms of peace and that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
I feel bad that, and people growing up now never knew what that was like. And then of course the internet changes everything too.
Yeah, by the 80s, a lot of the Cold War stuff had kind of cooled off a little bit. It wasn't near as tense as it was before that.
Mm-hmm. And we didn't, and other than the skirmishes, right? Like, there wasn't really like boots on the ground in a large amount.
Yeah.
War is profitable, and it allows the Federal Reserve to dilute the dollar more by printing to oblivion. Yep. Temporarily, it looks good for your pocket till the inflation destroys you. So Palmetto, when we withdrew from Afghanistan, I stupidly sold all of my military industrial complex stocks. And then, of course, what did we do? We very soon after got involved with a proxy war on Ukraine's behalf. And so all those companies are making a lot of money right now.
Yeah, I sold mine last year, Sarge.
Did you? Yeah. I hope you made some money with it.
No, there was two complementary stocks that I got years ago. One was Lockheed Martin and the other one was Boeing. And they was $300 or $400 a piece. Wasn't much. But I didn't want to be a part of all that.
You didn't want to support it? Yeah, I get that.
No.
I get that.
That's the same reason I left the Carpenters Union. Found out $8 an hour was going into the Democrat Party, and that pretty well burnt me out on making good money.
And you can't not contribute, right? In if you're part of certain places, like where I worked up in Massachusetts, you had to contribute to the union to work.
Yeah, you had to be a union card holder.
Yeah.
Or I couldn't even work for the company.
Yeah.
Couldn't have been on the job.
Sassy, it's good to see you. Thank you for joining us. Hope you're doing well. Burpee Yoga Uncle. So I don't know if anybody else caught this story on Carbon Q. Some of you all follow Carbon Q, and she's been pretty active on Instagram lately. She posted something about a bank in China failing today. I didn't catch that. Did you see that, Mac?
No, I've been outside working all day. I haven't really caught much news.
If anybody in chat saw that story and has a little bit more information, I don't really know that much, but it looked like what I saw looked like it was a pretty big bank. And what people don't realize, I know there's a lot of like USA versus China that goes on, but our economy is so intertwined with theirs that they fail means we fail, and vice versa. We fail. It's in a way that complex trade relationship that we have probably keeps us at peace, at least for the moment. We buy a lot of their products, and that keeps a lot of their people employed. But if that trade relationship breaks down, that's probably, doesn't bode well for our relations with them going forward from there. And I don't have an easy answer for any of that stuff. I mean, I certainly would love to see more businesses come back to the United States and manufacturing and factory jobs, things like that.
Reduce our dependence on the technology.
Yep. That would probably cut it down, but or is anyone gonna really do that? Are we gonna stop buying their chips?
No. No, everybody will keep going with the status quo.
Yep. Ed Benoit says, remember the government program in case of disaster is titled Continuation of Government. Yeah, they're not going to worry about the population for sure. Bacon's good to see you. Pretty sure no one wants my opinion on UBI. I want your opinion on UBI, Bacon. You can tell us.
Let's hear it, Bacon.
Cold War Prepper says, Dems party line, Senate rejected House bill to require proof of identity citizenship to vote today. Yeah, that's going to keep coming up. They'll we have to see how this election plays out in November, but I don't think that's going away. Weird. I have to have a license to drive my car. I have to have a license to practice therapy, actually. All right, just seeing if I missed anything related here. So Burpee says that in Hawaii they were arresting people for leaving the house, I think you mean? I didn't know that.
Huh. What was that about?
I don't know. Burpee Yoga, can you tell us a little bit more about that one? Lazarus Long, why is Maryland paying people to have babies? That is a very good question. Sassy Gal says Maryland is calling it a baby bonus of $1,000. So I was right. Yeah, why? Why does anybody know why they're doing this? Like, why are we encouraging people? Why are we incentivizing people to have babies? If you want to have a baby, that's great. I'm happy for you. I love babies, right? But why are we paying people to have babies? That seems weird. Okay, and here's Lee commented back on the thing from before. So simple analogy: after eating, poor ask, "Did you get enough?" Middle income ask, "How did it taste?" And the rich ask, "How was it presented?" Shows the shifting priority of income levels, and poor live for the moment. I gotcha. Okay. Yeah, so that goes to Maslow's hierarchy of human needs too, right? That when and this is something in the therapy world that we have to think about a lot. If somebody doesn't have a safe place to live, if somebody doesn't have food on the table, if somebody doesn't have fresh water to drink, then their priority is not necessarily dealing with their anxiety or having a great relationship with their wife. Their priority is eating and survival, right? So that's the lowest need on that pyramid is food, shelter, water. Those are the most important ones. And then once you've got those covered, people tend to focus on the other stuff, right? Companionship, achievement, creativity, right? But it's hard to focus on all that stuff if you're constantly having to focus on your survival. All right, Jonesy, it's good to see you. Jonesy says baby bonus is paid in Australia, but they have stopped it now and are just bringing in more people from overseas now. So why? Nobody can tell me why are we paying people to have? Is this just about taxes, like raising little taxpayers? Is that the goal? All right, and then Sassy says Flint, Michigan has a program started last year. You get $1,500 mid-pregnancy and $500 per month for the first year after birth. So I don't know. I mean, are all these places just like that? They're having such a shortage of babies? Is that what's going on?
I think it's just another program to break the system, drain money from the system. That Cloud pivot strategy,
or make people dependent.
Yeah.
Ed says every time there is a government subsidized product, that product is raised the same amount. Yep, that's what we were saying before. What Palmetto was saying. Yep. Yeah, I started saying before the living wage. So I'm personally opposed to a living wage, because what happens is, if let's say that just my little community here, right? Let's say that everybody here was making a living wage of, I don't know what it is, $23 an hour or something like that. All that's going to happen is the landlords are going to say, oh, people have more money, I'm going to raise the rent. And the businesses are going to say, oh, people have more money, I'm going to raise my prices. So then your living wage has gone out the window. And then those people are going to say, well, we need more to cover it. And it becomes this inflationary cycle that doesn't stop, right?
Yeah.
That's basic economics. Lee says Ruby Payne's book is Understanding Poverty. Duvall's book is Bridges Out of Poverty. Thank you, Lee. Baltimore, Maryland seems to think $1,000 baby bonus will to help lift children out of poverty. Yeah, I don't get it. Because you're, in my opinion, to raise a baby, just your hospital costs alone are probably going to put you at that. If not, you're going to pass that $1,000 in the first year. I mean, I suppose you could do it. I'll concede that a frugal family that grows their own food and or hunts, that they could probably do it less than that. Makes their own clothes, things like that. It probably could be done, but I don't think most people are living that way.
I would guess that a good portion of America don't even know how to prepare a from scratch meal.
Mm-mm. I know tons of people who don't. I know people who if they want a good meal, they have to eat out or order in, and they can do like just basic, like mac and cheese, or they can heat up some burgers or something on a pan, but that's it. That's all they can do. Mm-hmm. The first fully automated McDonald's been operational in Texas for a while. Wow. I've never been in one that's had the robots. I haven't seen that here yet. I'm sure it's coming. Cold-hearted bastard, thank you for joining us. Appreciate you.
And that's what Elon Musk was saying, the UBI is inevitable just because of the AI and automation.
Yeah, let's circle back to that. And I think that's probably where we're going to start to wind this one down. If I missed anybody's comments, I apologize. I'm just trying to catch as many as I can. That is my worry, is that automation eventually is going to force us to have to adopt something like I don't know if it will be a UBI or something similar to UBI, or you get, I don't know, credits that you use towards your rent or mortgage, or food credits or something. I can't see how we're going to avoid something like that down the road. And that has a lot of implications that I am worried about, such as what we were talking about at the beginning of this, the control and the power, right? So if I take, and you were saying this too, Mac, if we take something from the government, right, well, there's nothing free, right? There's always going to be a cost that's attached to that. And maybe the cost is that they say, I have to take their medicine. I have to, I don't know. You could probably, I have to send my kids to public school. I have to raise my kids without faith, or in a certain faith, or anything. Like, it just kind of depends on who's in power. And I don't think that any of that, like, we've gotten so far away from what the intention of the United States was, that just pushes us further into a place where we're not even a republic, right? We're at that point where just maybe it's some kind of socialism, maybe it's something a dictatorship. I think we were already gotten to a place, we supposedly did away with monarchies, and yet think about who runs for office, and not just talking about the president. I'm talking about most of your senators and representatives, right? They're royal families. They're American royalty. It's the same family, the Kennedys, right? Same people running over and over and over again. The Clintons, I wouldn't be surprised if Chelsea Clinton runs for office at some point, right? You'll probably see Michelle Obama run at some point, right? We had
And the
Hillary.
Obama kids.
Yep, they will. So we got away from kings and royalty, and yet we're right back at kings and royalty. We just call them something different now.
We let capitalism get out of control, but we did.
You think that was the cause of it? Just greed?
Yeah.
Yeah. Welcome back. Thank you. All right, let's go ahead and let's put our final thoughts on this, Mac. What are your final points on this? Anything you want to bring up?
Just get as independent from the system as you can is my advice to anybody.
How would you do that? What would you encourage people to how do they start? Let's say that.
Just start growing what food you can. Start looking to get to another location where you can actually do it. You know, I hear people all the time in cities say what their houses are worth if they sell them, and for the 500,000 you could get out of your house in the city, you could come out here in anywhere in the flyover states and buy you a nice small farm with a house and a barn, and probably go buy you a tractor, and you know, just because of the price difference.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, it's possible to get freer from the system than what most people are if they want to. Mm-hmm. You know, and one more point with that universal basic income, the food will probably get cheaper because they're doing away with beef and chicken and everything on the planet and introducing all this bug meal and crickets into the food supply. Tyson bought Protix out of the Netherlands, that big company, and they produce 7,000 tons of bug meal a year. And they're building another plant in Arkansas. That's Tyson, you know, that does a lot of the groceries. So all this bug meal's already in our food supply. I've been hearing that from several people a lot smarter than me. And the food will get cheaper if it's nothing but bug meal. So, you know, do away with the jobs through automation and make the food cheaper. Get everybody into a little pod living in a 15-minute city. They've said that's what their agenda is. I'll shut up. You probably got something to add before we run out of time.
Yeah, no, they're pushing that here in my city. You know, I do live in the city, but before that, I lived for 10 years on a little farm out in Kentucky, and you can see it. You can see they're pushing this like 15-minute city agenda. They're trying to discourage people from having cars. That's going to continue to happen, especially in the cities, at least for now. You're going to continue to see discouragement from owning a car. They're not building very many single family homes in my city. Everything is these cluster apartment complexes. And I lived in that before too, right? So I'm not knocking that, but
I've been there.
But it's going to get harder and harder and harder to own a single family home, which at one point was part of the American dream, right? To have your own little piece of the pie, your own little picket fence, you know, a dog and maybe a couple of kids and a little bit of privacy. That was a big part of the American dream, but that's definitely being pushed away. They want, I agree. I think there's an agenda to get everybody into apartments and not owning a car. So basically you'll own nothing and you'll be happy, right?
Yeah.
But maybe you're going to get your universal basic income. You're going to, because it's the only way to going to keep you in control, right? So as we were saying before, if you displace 40% of the people, you take away their jobs, and so the only way to keep those people from rioting is to cover that baseline of Maslow's hierarchy of human needs. Safe housing, right? And that I intentionally putting that in quotation marks. Food, and as you just said, that food is not going to be the food that we were used to growing up, for sure. It's going to be very, very, very different. So food, and then clean water. So you cover, and whole nother topic, but the water is medicated too, right? Most people know this. The city water is medicated. That's a different rabbit hole. I don't have time to go down that one today, but maybe somebody else can take a live stream on that. So you've got these systems where you can control people and basically keep them from rioting. And I personally think that things like, some of your television programming and TikTok and things like that, and even things like alcohol and stuff like that, coffee, and I'm a big coffee drinker.
Yeah.
Those are also systems to control us, right? So if I'm addicted to coffee, I have to keep buying that. But as long as I get my coffee, I think I'm happy, right? Am I happy? I think I'm happy because I can get my coffee, right? And we get numbed out by some of this stuff like wine and some of your your pharmaceuticals that are legal, but they're prescription drugs. And so we can numb people out. We can have them stay entertained with their TikTok and their Desperate Housewives,
Yeah.
uh, and we'll cover their very basic needs, and people won't riot. And
Yeah.
that's the game.
And sadly, that's where a lot of America is.
Yeah, yeah. I think most people will stay satisfied with that. Most people. That's why we have so much apathy in this country. Is most people are happy to have their TikTok and their red wine.
Yep.
So I do think this is inevitable. I do want to ask the chat though, what did anything we say make you more pro or more against UBI tonight? Let me know in chat. And if you're watching this on replay, let me know in the comments down below. I think it's inevitable because I think it's going to be one of those, once we start having massive automation, this is going to be one of the ways that they control us is they have to keep people kind of sedated, in other words. And if you have your basic needs covered, you're a whole lot less likely to start a revolution. So we're on the same page there, right?
Yeah.
We've been about the control piece of it. Yeah. All right, let's go ahead and we're going to wind this one down. I do want to say one last little piece. First of all, a couple little pieces. First of all, please check out Maccabeus Everyday Survival. His channel is floating down the bottom there. It's also in the description. He's got some really cool stuff. Definitely check out his lantern builds, which are super impressive. I have no ability to be handy with things like that, but he will show you how to make lanterns from just stuff you found lying around the house or in the scrapyard, things like that, right?
Yeah.
And that's another way to have a little bit of freedom, right? Like if you're not dependent on anybody for electricity because you have your own lighting, that's just another little piece of freedom that people might want in their life.
And developing the everything is a resource mentality. If you're going to try to not get sucked into this kind of system, you're going to have them kind of skills to survive.
Mm-hmm.
I believe.
Absolutely. I agree. And if nothing else, the way that I look at it, if none of this ever happens and we never hit this big SHTF situation, it's fun.
Yeah.
I like going out in the woods and learning how to forage. I like learning how to make campfires. You might like hunting. Somebody else might like fishing. A lot of people like gardening. So they're fun skills to have. And it's also like with bushcrafting and survival, it's good to keep these primitive skills alive. I'm still trying to learn how to make primitive fire. I'm trying. I'm not there yet. But it's like there's something primal about that makes you feel good when you achieve something like that, right? Like you had those videos of how to butcher a cow, right? And are those still up on your channel?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So I'd never seen that. So that was kind of cool for me to watch.
Taking the hooves off of them.
Mm-hmm. So definitely check that out. Learn some more independent skills. It looks like most people who are chiming in are against UBI. Not surprised by that. I understand 100%. And yeah, as Burpee Yoga Uncle says, when everybody has lost their job, we will have no income unless they figure something out. Lee says, I'm not for it. I work with the poor daily. I'm for affordable housing and foodstuffs. Okay, yeah. And I've been clear about this before. One thing that I do tend to have more left-leaning views on is healthcare. Because I work in that system, right? So I have my natural bias to it. I would like to see people have access to better healthcare, but I would prefer that there not be like you get the healthcare, then you have to take all these other conditions along with it, right? So not that like I can't have coffee because I'm accepting some kind of universal healthcare. I don't think it should work like that.
Yeah.
My positive message for the day is no matter what you're doing out there and whatever you're looking at for work, whether you're looking at displacement soon or hopefully never or down the road, There is something about work, whether you have to work for money or if you don't because you have another income or you're independently wealthy or whatever. The work in itself has value for us, right? Like it helps us to feel good about ourselves, to contribute to something. And it doesn't have to be, everybody's different. Like I get a lot of value for myself in doing therapy. The people I work with a lot of times are first responders, so they maybe a firefighter gets a lot of value out of going to a house fire and saving somebody's property, or going to a car accident and saving somebody from bleeding to death, or somebody else is building houses for somebody else, or somebody's paving roads that people can use, or you're building schools or anything. It really doesn't matter, right? Selling books, right? There's value in whatever it is that you do makes us feel better, right? And so if you can't work for money because of some of those issues we were talking about before, maybe you are getting disability or something like that, and if you work too much, it's going to screw you up with your health insurance. Then volunteer. Maybe think about if you can volunteer, because you will feel much better about yourself. And I've seen that again and again and again in the work that I do. Right, productivity. And if you can't do that for some reason, then productivity in your own home, grow a garden, have livestock, right? Have chickens, things like that, stuff that gets you up and gets you moving and that keeps you busy. If you don't have any of that, mental health will deteriorate. And I know that for a fact after 25 years of doing this work. Any final thoughts from you, Mac, before we close this one out?
If you got extra money, I'd be invested in the hard assets.
What would you buy?
Just now that you asked me, mine went blank. Oh,
Land?
Well,
Land is a good investment,
yeah,
right?
yeah, some metal and some lead,
Mhm.
for sure. Land, yes,
Yeah,
land for
Mhm.
sure. I would buy some land, and some states offer once you become a senior citizen, you can pay your taxes up like 10 years or something. So that would kind of clear you for a while,
Mhm.
if you're 65 or older. But my taxes don't run that much. I would definitely buy land and hard assets that you can survive with,
Mhm. Yep.
without dependency on the grid. A solar system, a small solar system. I've got two 250-watt panels and four 40-amp batteries and a charge controller, and I got it all for under $1,000.
Nice.
And I mean, that's not going to power a full house. If you're looking for that kind of system, you're going to go broke on it. But
Right.
it's enough to provide me with a few lights and my security camera system.
Yep.
And if you're
And
going to
you
buy
can
security camera systems, buy hardwired stuff. This wired stuff or wireless stuff can be jammed, by government or marauders or anybody. I'm probably going on too long, ain't I? Getting
no,
ready to get up
and
here.
yeah, and what you said there at the end, it's easier than people think. It's actually 15-year-old kids with just a little bit of YouTube training or videos can
Yeah,
absolutely hack through that stuff.
yeah,
It's very easy. Yep. Yep.
yeah. The jammers are illegal, but the gangs have been using jammers for at least 15 years, knocking out people's cell phone signals and then robbing them. That's that sort of thing, or raiding their house type. So I mean, it's a thing.
Yeah. So people look up, there's a product called the Flipper, right? And it's this little handheld device like this. It actually looks kind of like a video game controller. Look up the Flipper, and this is legal to own, at least in most states that I'm aware of. And you can do all kinds of crazy stuff with it. You can open electronic doors. You can, there are people, I'm not saying that I know how to do this, but there are people who can change stoplights. Like, so they're sitting at a red light, they can hit their flipper and turn it green. Um, Anything that's on a digital signal, a wireless digital signal, can be manipulated very, very easily.
Yes,
Yeah, look it up. It's called the Flipper, guys. Check it out. And it's
I
legal to
will.
own, but how you use it could be illegal. All right. Well, thank you so much, Maccabeus. I appreciate you.
Thank you
This
for
was,
having me.
of course, anytime. You're welcome back. This was a fun topic, and I hope everybody in chat enjoyed it. And make sure you're checking Maccabeus Everyday Survival out. And I will see you again. I think I'll be live again next Friday, and I'll try to get something out on Tuesday. I'll do my best. I got plenty of knives here that I owe some reviews on, so it's probably going to be a knife review. Y'all have a great night and a great weekend. Keep planting your seeds. Keep stacking your silver. This is Maccabeus, Everyday Survival and Prepping with Sarge. Night, everybody. All right. Thanks.